There are very special moments in the night when everything around us gradually grows quiet and we begin to feel another world opening within us. There are no longer any roles to perform, no more noise from daytime life. There is only you and the deepest thoughts of the soul. Carl Jung believed that it is precisely in such moments that the door to the world of the unconscious begins to open. A world where forgotten memories, unnamed fears, and the most secret longings still silently exist. According to Jung, a human being is not only the conscious part we recognize each day. Beneath that surface lies a vast ocean of the mind, where ancient symbols exist, where archetypes that have accompanied humanity for thousands of years still live, and where those shadowed parts we so often avoid remain. He called this the unconscious. And it is from there that dreams arise, unexpected emotions arise, moments of intuition arise, as if the soul were trying to tell us something important. Over the next 2 hours, we will slowly step into that deep inner world through the wisdom of Carl Jung. We will explore the hidden parts of the soul, understand the social mask, meet the shadow within, and gradually recognize the journey Jung called the process of becoming oneself. This is not only a lesson in psychology, but it is also a quiet journey back to the self, where you can hear your soul more clearly as night falls. Because sometimes the most important answers in life do not lie in the outer world, but rest quietly deep within the soul itself. And tonight, we will open the door to that world together, slowly, gently, like a journey back to yourself. So let your mind soften, and let this exploration begin. Number 1. When night falls, the soul begins to speak. When night falls, an almost invisible yet profoundly deep shift begins to take place inside every human being. During the day, we live in an outward-facing state. We respond to work, to messages, to the eyes of other people. We adjust our words, our attitude, even our emotions, to fit the environment around us. Consciousness functions like a busy operator, constantly keeping everything running smoothly. But when night descends and the sounds of the world gradually recede, that operator slows down. There is no longer so much to process, no longer so many roles to maintain, and in that silence, a deeper layer of the soul begins to speak. That voice does not arrive with the clarity of a conversation. It comes as a feeling, a light sadness we cannot name, a vague question about the path we are walking, a difficult emptiness that is hard to explain, even though everything seemed fine during the day. By day, we can pass over those signals. We are busy, distracted, full of reasons not to stop. But the night does not allow us to keep running. When the lights go out and the screen is no longer glowing in front of us, the inner space opens. And in that space, the things that have been delayed begin to find their way upward. Perhaps you have known the moment of lying in the dark and suddenly remembering some small thing from the day that made your heart grow heavy. Perhaps it was a sentence you blurted out, a decision you were not truly sure of, or a dream you quietly pushed aside. Night does not exaggerate those things. It only removes the noise so that you can see them more clearly. It is like the water of a great lake becoming still, and only then can you begin to see the lakebed. During the day, the surface is always rippling from the winds of responsibility and social interaction. But when the wind stops blowing, transparency appears. And in that transparency, you come face to face with your true depth. Jung once wrote, One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The darkness here is not something frightening. It is the parts we have not acknowledged, the feelings we have not named, the contradictions we have not dared to face. During the day, we can live without touching them. But night offers another possibility. It allows that darkness to move closer to consciousness, not to break us, but to make us more whole. I once witnessed this in Liam, a friend in my group. During the day, he was the most lively person there. He talked constantly, always made people laugh, and always kept the atmosphere light. No one would have thought he had anything weighing on his mind. But on one trip, after everyone else had fallen asleep, I saw him sitting alone outside a wooden cabin, staring into the night. No phone, no music, only stillness. He said that whenever it grew dark and no one was around, he began to feel the questions he did not allow himself to think about during the day. Was he really living in alignment with what he truly wanted? Was that cheerfulness his essence, or only a mask to cover over his unease? That moment revealed something important in Jung's thought. Human beings have a persona, the social mask that helps us adapt to the world. Persona is necessary. It helps us communicate and helps us survive in a community. But if we identify with it completely, we forget the deeper part of ourselves. Night is like the moment when that mask is set down. No one is watching, no one is judging, and when there is no audience left, we begin to sense our real face. The human soul is like a house with many levels. During the day, we live on the uppermost floor, the bright and familiar one. We clean it, arrange it, and keep everything looking neat. But below it are other levels, where memories are stored, unfinished emotions, delayed longings. During the day, we rarely go down there. But when night falls and the upper floor grows quiet, the deeper levels begin to send signals. Not to frighten us, but to remind us that we are not only what we display. Many people fear nighttime thoughts because they make them feel vulnerable. But vulnerability is not weakness. Vulnerability is what happens when we stop shielding ourselves from ourselves. When you lie in the dark and feel sad for no clear reason, perhaps that is an emotion that has been suppressed for many days. When you feel a vague longing, perhaps it is a dream you once had, but abandoned out of fear. Night does not weaken you. It only makes the truth inside you clearer. Imagine the soul as a mirror covered in dust. During the day, dust rises constantly, and the harsh light makes it hard for you to see your reflection. But when night falls and everything settles, the dust begins to drop. You start to see your image more clearly. You may not like everything you see, but it is a true image. And only by seeing clearly can you understand and change. Jung believed that the journey of becoming oneself, the process of individuation, begins with accepting the whole of who we are, both light and darkness. This does not happen in the noise of the day. It happens in quiet moments when we dare to stay with thoughts that are not comfortable. Night gives us that opportunity. Not every night brings awakening, but every night is a door. Perhaps you have known nights when everything seemed clearer than usual. Not because you found the answer, but because you stopped avoiding the question. You realized you had been running too fast. You realized some of your choices were made only out of habit, not out of true desire. Those realizations may make you uncomfortable, but they are precious, because only when you see what is happening inside you can you begin to live differently. Night does not ask you to fix everything at once. It only invites you to listen. And in that listening, you begin to build a different relationship with yourself. You understand that you are not only a social role, not only success or failure. You are a complex structure where light and darkness coexist. When you accept that, you no longer fear stillness. The deepest lesson of the night lies in honesty. When the soul begins to speak, do not rush to silence it with noise. Do not rush to assume that the feelings that arise are something negative. They are signs that you are living more deeply, not only on the surface. And when you are patient enough to remain with that stillness, you will realize that darkness is not a terrifying void. It is the space where your true self gradually reveals itself. Each night is an invitation to return to yourself. You do not need to understand everything. You do not need to solve everything. You only need enough courage to listen. Because sometimes the most important turning points in life do not happen in the brilliant light of day, but in quiet moments when you lie in darkness and allow your soul to speak. And from those moments, the journey of becoming the person you truly are begins, slowly, deeply, and steadily, like a silent current that never stops moving. Number 2, the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious, the world within the human being. If, in the stillness of the night, you have already begun to hear faint movements within yourself, then that means you are touching a layer far deeper than familiar consciousness. In the previous part, we spoke about the moment the soul begins to speak, when all outside noise falls away. But that voice does not come only from a passing emotional layer. It arises from a far larger structure, one in which private memory and ancient human patterns coexist. To truly understand ourselves, we must step into the world Carl Jung called the unconscious. Not only the forgotten part of the individual, but also the collective depth of the human soul. We often believe we are the sum of what we can still remember. We tell the story of our lives through clear milestones: childhood, family, choices, moments of success and failure. But Jung pointed out that what we remember is only the surface of a much more complex reality. There are experiences that once happened, but no longer remain in the light of consciousness. Not because they disappeared, but because we unconsciously pushed them away in order to keep living. That is the personal unconscious. The personal unconscious is not loud. It does not introduce itself. It shows itself through reactions whose origins we do not fully understand. You may find it difficult to trust others, even when there is no clear reason. You may always fear failure, even though your achievements are not bad at all. These tendencies do not appear out of nowhere. They usually arise from experiences that once left a deep imprint on the mind, but were never fully processed. When a current event resembles that of the past, even in a very small way, old feelings immediately rise, as though they had never left. Jung believed that if we do not recognize these unconscious forces, they will direct us without our knowing. He once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This line is not meant to frighten us. It is meant to remind us that the hidden part within us always has real influence. If we do not look at it, we are easily led to believe that everything that happens is only an external circumstance. But the unconscious does not stop at the personal level. Jung discovered that beneath private memories, there is also a shared foundation of humanity. He called this the collective unconscious. This is not your own memory. It is a treasury of images and patterns that have repeated across generations. Motifs of love, betrayal, sacrifice, power, loss, rebirth. These structures appear in literature, art, and spiritual life across every culture. Look at Raskolnikov in Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. He commits his crime not only because of circumstance, but because of an idea of moral superiority. His inner struggle is not merely personal conflict. It touches a larger question about conscience, about the boundary between reason and morality. Readers across different cultures still feel pulled into that torment because it awakens a common structure in human psychology, the conflict between ambition and moral responsibility. That is how the collective unconscious expresses itself through literature. The collective unconscious can be imagined as deep ground beneath each individual. You may build your life in your own way, but that ground still shapes how the structure stands. It influences how we understand good and evil, love and death, the meaning of sacrifice or power. Whether we are aware of it or not, those patterns remain present in how we think and feel. That is why our dreams sometimes contain images not directly related to personal experience. You may dream of falling into an abyss, being trapped in a narrow space, or standing before a door that cannot be opened. These images are symbolic. They do not merely retell the events of the day. They reflect deeper movements in the soul, movements universal in nature, such as fear, change, or the longing to break free. When we understand that both the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious exist within us, we begin to look at inner conflict differently. Instead of hastily seeing ourselves as abnormal, we may realize that we are taking part in a natural process of development. Moments of disorientation are not necessarily failures. There may be signs that an old structure is no longer wide enough for the person growing inside you. The inner world, then, is not only a place where private history is stored. It is a space where the individual and humanity meet. When you feel deeply drawn to a certain image in art or cinema, that may not be a simple preference. A deep pattern within you may be awakening. When you feel fear before a major change, that may not be only present anxiety, but the reaction of a psychological structure that has existed across generations to protect life. You do not need to turn yourself into an analyst of your own psyche. You do not need to dissect every emotion into concepts. What is far more necessary is a quiet attitude, staying with what is happening inside without rushing to manage it. When a feeling rises too quickly or too strongly, instead of controlling or denying it, give it a few breaths. When a dream leaves behind an aftertaste you do not understand, do not rush to dismiss it as meaningless. Hold it in memory, or write down a few lines. When you notice yourself repeatedly falling into the same kind of relationship, do not blame yourself. See it as a map repeating itself, inviting you to look more deeply at what has not yet become conscious. Over time, that calm attention will create a subtle shift. You will no longer be completely swept away by impulsive reactions. You begin to notice that there is a small space between the outside event and the feeling rising within. That space may be delicate, but it is immensely precious. At that moment, you have a choice: continue reacting in the old way or try another one. It is precisely this capacity for awareness that opens freedom. Not freedom from problems, but freedom from the invisible control of what has not yet been recognized. When you understand the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious in this way, you do not separate yourself from life. On the contrary, you enter it with greater clarity. You no longer see yourself as someone completely determined by circumstance, nor do you see the past as a fixed sentence. You begin to see yourself as a process still unfolding, where every experience, whether private or universal, contributes to shaping the person who is being formed day by day. If these reflections make you feel that there is still much depth within you left unexplored, leave a comment. I am going inward. That is not only a statement. It is the shift from living on the surface to courageously entering the vast inner space, where growth begins with the willingness to look directly at oneself, slowly and sincerely. Number 3. The social mask, the person you show to the world. The moment you begin to realize that deeper movements exist inside you beyond consciousness is also the moment another question quietly appears. Who then is the person the world is seeing? If we have already moved through the hidden layers of the unconscious, we now stand before the exact opposite, the carefully organized surface layer that adapts to the gaze of society. Carl Jung called this layer the persona, the mask we wear when we step into the world. And unlike what we often think, the issue is not whether we have a mask or not. The issue is whether we know that we are wearing it. Persona begins to form very early. As children, we quickly learn that certain expressions will be rewarded, while others will be rejected. A well-behaved child is often loved. A child who is too sensitive may be told they are weak. A child who gets angry may be seen as difficult. Little by little, we adjust ourselves. We keep the parts that are accepted and push away the parts that make the surrounding world uncomfortable. This process is not deliberate dishonesty. It is the instinct to survive within a group. But from that point, an image begins to take shape, an image both we and others become familiar with. Jung once wrote, "The persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself, as well as others, think one is. Persona is what in truth we are not, but what both we and others believe we are." That sentence can feel shocking because it places a question mark over the entire image we have built. But Jung did not reject the role of persona. He understood that without it, it would be difficult for a human being to function in society. Persona is the bridge between the ego and the world. It allows us to take on roles, fulfill responsibilities, and participate in relationships without exposing the whole of our inner life. The problem begins when we identify with that role completely. When we believe we are only the successful one, the strong one, the cheerful one, the one who never makes mistakes. Those labels may be useful at first, but if we cling to them too tightly, we gradually narrow ourselves into a fixed image. We lose flexibility. We do not allow other parts of ourselves to exist. And every time our inner reality fails to match that image, we feel anxious, even panicked. During an advanced course in analytical psychology that I attended in New York, I met a woman named Sarah. She was the creative director of a major media company, used to appearing before crowds with confidence and sharpness. In the first sessions of the course, Sarah always spoke in a highly controlled voice, analyzing her experiences in very articulate language. She seemed to always know exactly what she was saying and why. But during one exercise, when each person was asked to describe the part of me I never show anyone, Sarah fell silent. That silence lasted so long that the whole room grew tense. Finally, she said that what she feared most was that if the image of the strong and creative woman disappeared, she would become invisible. She admitted that when she was alone, she often felt she was not good enough, and that it was precisely this fear that made her work even harder to maintain a perfect image. Sarah's story is not unusual. Many people spend their whole lives trying to protect a persona that once helped them gain acceptance. They become experts, leaders, caregivers, and inspirers. But inside, there may remain a part that is tired of always performing. That exhaustion does not come from the work itself. It comes from the pressure of maintaining the image. When persona becomes our only identity, we live in a state of constant vigilance. We are afraid of being seen differently. We are afraid of revealing imperfection. And that fear consumes an enormous amount of energy. Persona is like a suit of armor, crafted with exquisite precision. It protects us from direct collisions with society. But if we wear that armor for too long, we forget the natural feeling of our own body. We no longer know where the metal ends and the skin begins. At that point, every criticism aimed at the role becomes a personal wound. Every outer change becomes a threat to the entire self. What is striking is that society often encourages us to strengthen persona. Achievement is rewarded, stability is praised, consistency of image is seen as professionalism. Very rarely are we asked, what do you truly feel behind that image? And when there is no space in which to remove the mask, we may gradually lose the ability to recognize what we genuinely feel. We get used to saying, I'm fine, even when we are not. We get used to staying composed even when chaos is stirring inside. But persona is not the enemy. It only becomes a problem when we forget that we are able to take it off. Jung did not advise us to destroy all social roles. He only emphasized that the persona must remain flexible. We can step into a role when needed and step out of it when it is no longer needed. That flexibility requires consciousness. When you know which role you are performing, it does not swallow you whole. Transformation begins with acknowledging the distance between image and inner experience. You may be a strong leader and still have the right to feel afraid. You may be a devoted caregiver and still have the right to feel tired. You may be an inspiring person and still have the right to doubt yourself. When you allow those contradictions to coexist, persona is no longer a prison. It becomes a tool. The deepest lesson of persona is not live naked before everyone. That is neither realistic nor necessary. The lesson is to create for yourself at least one space where you do not have to perform. It may be a trusted friend. It may be a journal page that no one reads. It may be only a few minutes each day when you admit what you truly feel. Those moments protect your identity from shrinking into a social image. When you begin to distinguish between the person you present and the person you experience within, a kind of freedom appears. You no longer depend entirely on the gaze of others to confirm your worth. You can fulfill your role professionally without losing sincerity. You can step into the world with confidence and still return to yourself in honesty. And it is precisely at that point of balance that real maturation begins. Not by removing the mask, but by recognizing that it is only one part of you, not the whole of you. When you are conscious enough to wear it without being controlled by it, you take another step on the path Jung called individuation, becoming yourself within society, not losing yourself in order to be accepted by society. Number 4. The darkness within, meeting your own shadow. And once you have begun to see the mask you wear each day, a deeper question quietly arises in the mind. If that is not yet the whole of who I am, then where is the rest? What has been left behind the light of the image I keep trying to maintain? Carl Jung called that part the shadow, the shadow. Not darkness in the simple moral sense of good and evil, but everything we do not want to admit is part of us. These are the feelings, tendencies, desires, and fears we once learned to suppress because they did not fit the image we wanted to preserve. The shadow is not only the ugly part, it is the part excluded from consciousness because it causes discomfort, shame, or unsettles the story we tell about ourselves. From the earliest years of life, we begin this process. We learn that some expressions make us loved, while others bring rejection. We keep our obedience and hide our anger. We keep our strength and hide our fear. We keep our generosity and hide our need to be prioritized. This process helps us adapt to society, but it also creates a dark region inside where the rejected parts continue to exist in silence. Jung once wrote, "Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is brought into conscious life, the darker and denser it becomes." This is not meant to frighten us. It is meant to remind us that what we reject does not disappear. It accumulates energy, and that energy, if left unrecognized, will find ways to express itself through the paths we control least. One of those paths is projection. You may have hated someone for being too ambitious, too confident, too visible. But that discomfort may not only be about them. It may be touching the part of your own ambition you have never allowed yourself to admit. You may feel irritated by someone who is too emotional, while you yourself learned never to allow yourself to cry. We often believe the problem lies outside us, but sometimes what triggers us most strongly is a mirror reflecting the part hidden within. Think of the myth of Hades, the god who ruled the underworld in Greek culture. Hades was not evil, though he lived in darkness. He ruled a realm the living did not want to look at. From Jung's perspective, the underworld can be understood as the deep level of the soul, where what has not been processed and what has not been accepted is stored. When Persephone is pulled down into that world, the story is not only about loss, it is about the necessity of going down in order to return with new awareness. Without the descent, there is no real growth. The shadow within you is like that. It does not exist to destroy you. It exists to complete you. But if you try to ignore it, it will find ways to speak through reactions you cannot control, through sudden anger, through strange jealousy, through lingering shame. When we do not dare look into the depths rise up in the very ways that surprise us most. Imagine the soul as a house with many levels. The top floor is where light pours in, where you receive guests, and where you proudly display the finest things. But below there is also a basement. Down there are the objects you do not want to show, the memories you have not dared to reopen. If you lock the basement door and pretend it does not exist, the house does not become stronger for that. On the contrary, what has been forgotten may begin to rot. The only way to keep the house whole is to go downstairs from time to time, open the door, and look at what is there. Many people fear that if they look directly at their dark side, they will become worse. But in reality, it is denial that makes it dangerous. When you admit that you can feel anger, you begin to understand what triggers it. When you admit that you can feel envy, you begin to see what you long for. When you admit that you can be selfish, you learn how to set boundaries instead of quietly building resentment. Recognition does not make you worse. It gives you the power to choose. The paradox is that the shadow does not contain only negative qualities. It also keeps the capacities you have not yet dared to live. Some people do not dare admit their ambition because they fear being seen as arrogant. Some do not dare shine because they fear being envied. Some do not dare love deeply because they fear being hurt. These potentials are pushed down not because they are bad, but because they make us anxious. When you say, "I'm not that kind of person," perhaps you are protecting yourself from fear more than expressing your true nature. When night falls and you no longer have to maintain your image in front of anyone, another kind of space gradually opens. In that quiet, the things overlooked during the day are given a chance to return. Not loudly, not dramatically, just small waves touching the shore of consciousness. A memory that makes you sink inward, a feeling you cannot name, an unease with no clear source. Night does not create those things. It only removes some of the interference so that you can hear more clearly what was already there. Perhaps you have tried to push those thoughts away because they made you uncomfortable. But if, instead of resisting, you stay a little longer, you may discover that they do not come to destroy you. They come like forgotten parts knocking at the door, not to demand that you change everything immediately, but to be acknowledged. And the very act of acknowledgement is already a profound shift. When you say to yourself, "I see this in me," you are widening the boundaries of your identity. This is a slow process. It is not that one look back makes everything clear, but each time you are honest enough to look more deeply into yourself, you narrow the distance between the person you present and the person you truly are. Inner tension begins to soften. You no longer have to maintain an image that is too perfect. You begin to feel lighter because you are no longer dividing yourself into the parts that are allowed to exist and the parts that are not. And in that gentle state, you also begin to look at others differently. You understand that everyone is struggling with parts of themselves that have never been named. Compassion is no longer a moral effort. It becomes the natural consequence of understanding yourself. When you recognize that light and darkness coexist within you, you stop demanding perfection from others. Right now, in the stillness in which you are listening, give yourself a slower breath and ask, when was the last time you truly touched that hidden part within yourself? If you are brave enough, share that story in the comments. Not to seek advice or validation, but so that you yourself may hear spoken aloud what has been kept in silence for too long. Because growth does not begin by removing the dark part, but by gently turning back toward it, looking directly at it, and allowing yourself to become a little more whole. Number 5. Why we often see in others what we hate in ourselves. And once you have begun to become familiar with your own dark side, the outer world seems to change as well. Not because other people have changed, but because the way you see them is no longer the same. You begin to notice that your strongest reactions rarely concern only the behavior happening right in front of you. They touch something deeper. There are moments that are extremely subtle and yet full of weight. You meet someone who talks often about their achievements, and suddenly a feeling of irritation rises within you. You see someone living comfortably with their emotions and silently judge them as lacking control. You encounter someone who always puts their own needs first, and you label them selfish. Those judgments may not be entirely wrong, but what matters is the feeling that comes with them. Why do certain people provoke such strong reactions in you, while others with similar behavior do not? Jung once wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." This line is not meant to erase the boundary between right and wrong. It opens another possibility. Your emotions are not only reactions to the world, but they are also signals from your inner structure. When a reaction carries an intensity that exceeds the situation, it is very likely touching a deeper part of you that you have never really examined. A friend of mine once shared that she was intensely irritated by a new colleague, a young woman who often spoke about her ambitions and was not afraid to talk about her big goals. She described the annoyance she felt every time the other woman talked about her dreams. She believed it was a tactless self-display. But after some time observing herself, she realized that what irritated her was not the other woman's ambition, but her own ambition, the one she had buried. She had once wanted to pursue a different direction in her career, but because she feared failure and being judged, she chose the safer path. When she saw someone daring to live out their ambition openly, the unlived part within her was activated. That irritation was no longer just judgment. It became a reminder. From the perspective of neuroscience, this is entirely understandable. Our brains store emotional memory in networks of association. When a present situation resembles an old experience, especially one marked by pain or conflict, the nervous system reacts faster than reason. The amygdala sends warning signals before the cortex has time to analyze the context. We feel irritated, tense, or defensive without knowing why. We assume the other person is the cause, but in truth, the reaction is being activated from within. In analytical psychology, Jung called this mechanism projection. When a quality is not accepted in consciousness, it does not disappear. It is pushed outward and assigned to other people. We see in them what we do not want to see in ourselves. It is like standing before a white wall while light from behind you casts an image onto it. The image appears, and you believe the content belongs to the wall, but the source of the light is not there. It is behind you. Other people are only the surface onto which what is operating within you is projected. This does not mean that everything you dislike in others is a copy of yourself. Some behaviors are genuinely harmful, but when a certain type of person repeatedly triggers you strongly, that is when it is worth pausing. Perhaps you are always irritated by people who seem too soft, while you have never allowed yourself to be vulnerable. Perhaps you hate selfishness, while you have sacrificed yourself to the point of exhaustion. Perhaps you criticize people who stand out, while you were once taught that shining is dangerous. Imagine that you are carrying a metal detector along a beach. Every time the machine makes a sound, you know that something metallic lies beneath the sand. Your emotional reactions to other people are like that signal. When it sounds too strongly, perhaps something beneath the sand of consciousness is still buried, something not yet excavated. Instead of focusing only on the surface of what that other person did, you might become curious about what lies deeper. That curiosity requires courage and humility, because it is much easier to hold fast to the position of the judge. When we say, "They are wrong," we preserve a sense of control. But when we ask, "What does this say about me?" we step into uncertainty. We have to admit that our reaction is not entirely objective. We have to accept that a part of our personal story is present in that feeling. But it is precisely in that admission that you begin to reclaim energy that had once been scattered outward. Each time you look at your reaction instead of looking only at another person's behavior, you are pulling back an arrow you once sent flying. You are no longer trapped in a repeated cycle of irritation. You begin to understand that the outer world is sometimes only the surface onto which inner content is cast. When you practice this long enough, a profound shift begins to occur. You are no longer triggered as easily as before. Not because other people have changed, but because your field of awareness has widened. You can admit the ambition within yourself without shame. You can accept the need to be recognized without calling it a weakness. You can recognize anger without denying it. And once you have seen those parts within yourself, you no longer need to fight them in other people. The world gradually becomes a mirror instead of a battlefield. Every person you meet, every collision you go through, can become an opportunity to understand yourself more deeply. This does not make you passive, nor does it mean you accept all harmful behavior. It simply allows you to act with greater clarity. You can still set boundaries when necessary, but you are no longer swept away by unconscious waves of feeling. The practice for this part begins with something very simple. When someone causes you strong discomfort, do not rush to conclude. Take a few minutes at the end of the day to sit quietly and remember that feeling. Ask yourself, what in this reaction feels familiar to me? When have I felt this in another situation? Is there any quality I was once criticized for and therefore learned to deny? Do not search for a perfect answer. Just open yourself to the possibility that your reaction has more layers than you think. Each time you do that, you are moving from reaction into awareness. You are not denying emotion. You are simply refusing to let it completely direct the way you see the world. And in that shift, you grow by one more step. Gradually, you will begin to feel a subtle relief. You will no longer have to spend so much energy fighting the images that make you uncomfortable. You will no longer be pulled into inner wars every time you meet a familiar type of person. You will understand that what you hate may in fact be the door leading toward the part you have never dared to recognize. And in that journey, you begin to look at other people with softer eyes. Not because they are perfect, but because you know that each human being carries within them parts not yet fully understood. When you are brave enough to look into your own reactions, you not only understand others more, you understand yourself more deeply. And that understanding becomes the foundation of inner freedom, the kind of freedom that does not come from changing the outer world, but from illuminating the world within. Number 6. Dreams, messages from the depths of the soul. Have you noticed that there are things you do not dare think about during the day, yet at night they come to you in the form of a dream? After we understand that our reactions to other people can be mirrors reflecting the inner world, another door, even deeper, begins to wait. If the outer world reflects us by day, then at night the soul begins to reflect itself. And there is no social language, no role, no mask. There are only images. Jung once wrote, "Dreams are the guiding words of the soul." He did not see dreams as the meaningless randomness of a sleeping mind, but as a way the depths of the soul begin to speak when consciousness has grown quiet. So dreams do not come to deceive you. They come to guide you back toward what is truly taking place within you. By day, you live in the world of logic. You make plans, solve problems, arrange things into order. But at night, the mind shifts into another language, the language of symbols. A house is no longer merely a house. A long corridor may no longer be only architecture. A dark forest may no longer be only nature. Every image carries a feeling, and that feeling is the key. In the Bible, there is the story of Jacob. As he left his homeland in a state of unease, he slept on the road and dreamed of a ladder reaching from earth to heaven, with angels ascending and descending upon it, and God standing above. When he awoke, Jacob said that the place was truly holy, though he had not recognized it before. From a Jungian perspective, this story is not merely religious in meaning. It reveals a profound symbol. The ladder is the image of connection between consciousness and the unconscious, between earthly human life and the sacred depth within. Jacob's dream appears at a transitional point in his life, when he leaves the familiar behind and steps into the unknown. It is not a simple prophecy. It is the image of an inner process. Jung believed that dreams often appear with great force during periods of transition. When you stand before an important decision, when a relationship ends, when an old identity no longer fits. Consciousness may try to keep everything stable, but the unconscious knows that change is underway. And it sends images like Jacob's ladder, reminding you that a shift is happening in the depths of the soul. One important point in Jung's thought is the compensatory function of dreams. If by day you are overly rational, a dream may bring intense emotion. If you always try to appear strong, a dream may place you in a state of vulnerability. If you are avoiding an important decision, a dream may repeat the image of you missing a train. It does not come to punish you. It only highlights what you are overlooking. Imagine the soul as a vast garden. By day, you tend the flower beds you love. You water the plants you want to keep. But some seeds fall into hidden corners you do not notice. At night, in darkness and stillness, those seeds begin to sprout. Dreams are like a flashlight shining into that corner of the garden, showing you what is growing beyond the reach of daytime sight. What matters is not to rush to decode dreams through rigid formulas. Jung did not encourage looking up symbols as though in a dictionary. He emphasized that each image must be understood within the context of the dreamer's personal life. A snake may be feared by one person. For another, it may be a symbol of rebirth. An old house may be a childhood memory, or it may be the image of one's present psychic structure. Meaning does not lie in the isolated symbol. It lies in the relationship between the symbol and the dreamer's life. And yet Jung also spoke of a deeper layer of dreams, the place where collective archetypes appear. Images such as the mother, the hero, the traitor, the descent into the underworld, and the road through a dark forest repeat across many cultures. When such images appear in dreams, they are not speaking only of personal events. They reflect a universal psychological process. Perhaps you are entering a period of transition. Perhaps you are leaving an old identity behind in order to form a new one. There are dreams that leave you waking with a feeling that is strikingly clear and yet difficult to describe. You may dream that you stand before a door, but do not dare open it. You may dream that you are searching for something in a strange room. You may dream of rising water or of flying high into the air. Instead of asking, "What omen does this dream carry?" you might ask, "What in my present life corresponds to this image?" The door may be an opportunity. The strange room may be an unexplored part of yourself. Rising water may be an emotion that has not yet been processed. The practical application of this does not require complex knowledge. It begins with remembering. When you wake up, do not reach for your phone right away. Lie still for a few minutes and remember the image that just appeared. Write down as many details as you can, the colors, the space, the feelings. Then, later in the day, come back to it and ask yourself, what does this image call up in my life right now? What stage am I in? Is there something I am avoiding? Gradually, you will begin to see that dreams do not come to confuse you. They come to make you more whole. By day, you may believe you have made the right decision. But at night, a dream may show that another part of you is still uncertain. By day, you may think you have let go, but a dream may show that the wound is still there. Dreams do not tell you that you are right or wrong. They simply show what has not yet become fully conscious. This is especially important in the practice of slowing down before sleep. When you hear these words at night, you are in a state closest to dreaming. Consciousness has softened. The boundary between thought and image has begun to loosen. This is the ideal time to plant a different attitude in the mind. Instead of fearing dreams, respect them. Instead of seeing them as a disturbance, see them as a message. Dreams do not require you to understand them immediately. Some dreams only become clear after many years. Some images return again and again like patient reminders. What matters is not how perfectly you decode them. What matters is that you maintain a relationship with that deepest part of yourself. In a noisy world constantly overstimulated by information, dreams are one of the rare places where the soul can still speak in its own language. They do not compete with outer noise. They wait for you to sleep. And when you sleep, they open the little door Jung once spoke of. So tonight, before you drift into sleep, try something very simple. Whisper to yourself that you are willing to listen. Not to listen with your ears, but with a gentle kind of attention when you awaken. And tomorrow, if an image remains, do not rush to brush it away. See it as one piece of the inner story you are living. Because sometimes the thing you most need to understand does not appear in daytime conversation, but in the quiet images of the night where the soul speaks to itself. Number 7. Ancient patterns living within every human being. And yet, if dreams open the door into the depths of the soul, then what waits on the other side is not only private memory or unnamed feeling. There also exist structures far older than that, patterns that have lived in the human mind for thousands of years. When a story moves you, when you naturally take on a familiar role in your family, when you find yourself repeating a pattern without even intending to, you may well be touching what Carl Jung called an archetype. Jung once wrote, "The archetype is a tendency to form such representations of a motif, representations that can vary a great deal in detail without losing their basic pattern." Within the human soul, ancient patterns like these are always present, and from them, familiar images, roles, and stories continue to repeat across many lives, many cultures, many eras. You can notice this in very ordinary situations. In some families, without anyone ever speaking it aloud, there is always a role of the one who carries everything. That person may be the eldest brother, the eldest sister, or even the youngest child. They naturally feel they must be strong, responsible, and steady whenever everything becomes chaotic. No one forces them, and yet they step into that place as if it were obvious. In Jung's light, this is not merely personality. It may be the protector archetype being activated. Somewhere else, there may be a person who is always seeking freedom, always longing to leave the comfort zone, always driven by distant horizons. They may change jobs many times, try new paths, and refuse to remain within one frame for too long. That is not merely impulsiveness. It may be that the wanderer archetype is very much alive within them. Archetypes work like underground rivers flowing beneath the surface of consciousness. You do not see them, but they shape the current of your life. You may think you are completely free in your choices, yet many times you are responding to an ancient pattern that existed long before you became aware of it. This does not mean you are ruled by fate. It means you carry within you a deep psychological inheritance. Think of the image of the mother in everyday life and look at simple moments. A woman waking early to prepare breakfast, quietly cleaning up after everyone has gone to sleep, always the first to sense when something is wrong. That image is not only one individual story, it touches the nurturer archetype. And what is striking is that this archetype does not live only in women. Many men also carry that energy within them: care, protection, compassion. By contrast, within each of us there also lives the child archetype, the innocent, curious, creative part. When you laugh naturally, when you become enchanted by something small, like watching the rain, or listening to an old piece of music, that part is present. But if you were raised in an environment that was too harsh, you may have learned to suppress it. Then life begins to feel dry and colorless. Not because the world has changed, but because one archetype in you has been pushed into the dark. Jung believed that archetypes are neither good nor bad. They are energies. The problem begins when we identify too strongly with one pattern and forget the others. If you live only as the protector, you may forget how to rest. If you live only as the wanderer, you may struggle to build stability. If you live only as the nurturer, you may lose your personal boundaries. Imagine your soul as an ancient garden with many doors. Each door leads to a different part of the garden: the hero's place, the child's place, the teacher's place, the rebel's place. You do not need to destroy any of those areas. But if you walk only in one corner of the garden, you will begin to believe that corner is the whole world. Psychological growth is the process of opening more of those doors. In modern life, archetypes are also fed by popular culture. The image of the successful person who never gets tired is repeated across social media. The image of the one who sacrifices everything for family is glorified in films. When you unconsciously chase those images, you may be identifying with a collective archetype without ever asking whether it truly fits your inner structure. Understanding archetypes gives you distance. When you notice that you are always taking on the role of rescuing others, you can stop and ask, is this my free choice, or is it a pattern I have lived in for too long? When you notice that you fear failure so much that you do not dare take a step, you can ask yourself, which archetype is active in me, the defender or the child who was once criticized? This is not meant to make you turn every action into a concept. It is meant to give you flexibility. When you become aware that many archetypes live within you, you are no longer imprisoned in one single story about yourself. You can be strong when needed and still allow yourself to be vulnerable. You can care for others and still allow yourself to be cared for. Archetypes also help us understand why fairy tales never die. The story of the hero leaving home, passing through trials, and returning is not mere entertainment. It reflects the path of growth in every human life. When you change careers, when you end a relationship, when you enter a new phase of life, you are living that motif. The changes happening within you are not strange. They are the ancient rhythm of the human soul. The practical application of this section begins by observing the recurring roles in your life. In your group of friends, who are you usually? The listener, the leader, the rebel, the one who eases tension? Write down that role and ask yourself, if I were to step outside this role just a little, what would happen? Even a small shift may open a new part of you. When you understand that ancient patterns live within you, you begin to feel less alone. The conflicts you experience are not abnormal. They are part of the human story. Fear, longing, love, loss, all of it was lived before you and will continue to be lived after you. You are not separate from that current. You are one link in the long chain of human experience. Thank you for staying with this journey through its halfway point. If these reflections touched you, share this video so that others may also enter the journey of exploring the inner world, slowly, deeply, and with awareness. Sometimes one small act like that is enough to open one more door in someone's inner garden. Number 8. The journey of becoming oneself, the path of individuation. After you have begun to see the ancient patterns moving quietly within you, after you have recognized that you are not only social roles or unconscious reactions, a deeper layer begins to open. This is no longer the story of discovering separate pieces one by one. It becomes the story of connecting them, because recognition alone is not enough. The essential question is how all these parts, light and darkness, strength and vulnerability, reason and feeling, can exist together within one harmonious structure. It is here that Jung laid the foundation for the idea of individuation, the journey of becoming a living whole instead of a patchwork ego. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." This line does not speak about becoming more special than other people. It speaks about deep honesty with oneself. Individuation is not about inventing a new identity to impress the world. It is about gradually removing the layers that do not belong to you. For many years, we may live according to the expectations of family, society, and environment. We learn to adapt, to achieve, to build an image. But at some point, perhaps very quietly, we begin to feel that what we are living does not entirely reflect the person deep inside. That feeling is not loud. It is like a slight misalignment in the rhythm. And that very misalignment is the starting point of the journey. Jung believed that the ego is the center of consciousness, but not the center of the whole psyche. Behind the ego is the self, a totality that includes both consciousness and the unconscious. When we are young, the ego usually dominates. We build careers, images, relationships, and seek recognition. That is necessary. But if life revolves only around strengthening the ego, emptiness soon begins to appear. Individuation is the process of shifting the center from the ego to the self. Not erasing the ego, but placing it where it belongs, as one part of the whole, not the whole person. This journey rarely begins in ease. More often, it is activated by a crisis. It may be a professional failure, the collapse of a relationship, an event that forces you to look again. Jung did not see the crisis as something purely negative. He saw it as a stage of transformation. When the old structure no longer fits, it must crack so that a new structure can emerge. That process can be painful because we must let go of what once defined us. But it is precisely within that breaking that the possibility of growth appears. The story of Robert Downey Jr., the American actor famous for Iron Man, is a very clear example. From being one of Hollywood's most promising young talents, he fell into the spiral of addiction and self-destruction. There was a time when nearly every door in his career seemed to close. But instead of continuing to run, Robert Downey Jr. gradually faced the darker parts within himself. His return was not only a commercial success on screen, it also revealed the sign of a man who had begun to integrate the very parts that once caused his collapse. From a Jungian perspective, this was not merely a superficial comeback. It was a process of individuation, when a person is no longer completely controlled by the unconscious parts that have not been acknowledged, but begins to live with a deeper awareness of who they are. Individuation does not require you to go through some great tragedy. It can begin with very small things, a feeling of discomfort when you say something you do not believe, a sense of emptiness when you achieve a goal and still do not feel whole, a quiet urge to change something, though you do not yet know what. These signals are often overlooked because they are not dramatic, yet they are invitations. And when you begin to listen, you begin the journey. Imagine the soul as an inner compass. For many years, the needle may have been pulled by outer magnetic fields, expectation, status, and comparison. You travel very far in that direction, but at some point, you realize that you have drifted away from the deep direction within. Individuation is the process of realigning that compass. Not turning your back on the world entirely, but finding balance between outer demands and inner voice. As the needle gradually steadies, you begin to feel coherence, not because life becomes easier, but because you no longer have to split yourself apart to adapt. Another image may help make this clearer. Think of a symphony. For a long time, perhaps only one instrument has been playing too loudly. Ambition, responsibility, fear of failure. Other instruments, creativity, intuition, and the need for rest have been drowned out. Individuation is the rebalancing of that orchestra. When every instrument has a chance to sound, the music becomes richer and more alive, no longer monotonous, no longer distorted. What is important to understand is that this journey has no fixed endpoint. There is no moment when you can declare, "I have completely become myself." It is an ongoing process. Each stage of life brings a new challenge. When you integrate one part, Another part may arise asking for attention. Growth is not a straight line. It is more like a spiral. You return to old themes, but at a higher level of awareness. The practical application of individuation lies in daily honesty. When you notice yourself acting only to be accepted, you can adjust. When you notice yourself hiding a longing because you fear being judged, you can give it a small space to exist. These adjustments are not loud, but they accumulate over time. Each time you choose to live in closer alignment with your inner values, you move nearer to wholeness. Individuation also requires that you accept the contradictions within yourself. You may need independence and still long for connection. You may want safety and still crave adventure. When you stop forcing yourself into one single image, you allow yourself to become more flexible. That flexibility is the sign that the self is gradually becoming the center. In the quiet of the night, as you listen to these reflections, you may begin to feel something very subtle. The journey of becoming yourself is not a race. It is a slow process of return. You do not need to tear down your whole present life. You only need, day by day, a little more honesty, a little more awareness, a little more courage to face what is within. And perhaps this is exactly what Jung wanted to remind us of. The privilege of a lifetime does not lie in how many achievements we collect, but in daring to live in accord with the deep structure of our own soul. Individuation does not make you different because you are trying to be different. It makes you more genuine because you no longer have to pretend. When light and darkness are integrated, when archetypes are placed into harmony, when the ego no longer occupies the whole stage, you begin to feel a steady stillness within. That is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of a life that is more alive and more meaningful. Number 9. The harmony of opposites within the mind. After moving through the journey of becoming oneself, we reach a deeper threshold, living with the opposing parts of the mind without trying to erase either side. This is something Jung saw very clearly. He understood that human beings do not suffer only because life is complicated, but also because inwardly there are always forces pulling in opposite directions. We want peace, yet we also want a breakthrough. We want to be loved, yet we are afraid of being seen too clearly. We want to be strong, and yet there are times when all we want is to let go. The problem is not that such things coexist. The problem is that we often force ourselves to choose one side and then declare the other wrong, weak, or unacceptable. But the soul does not function like a neat declaration. It lives through quiet tensions, and those very tensions create the depth of a human being. Jung wrote it very simply. There is no energy unless there is a tension of opposites. We often imagine maturity as the point at which inner contradiction disappears. But Jung shows the opposite. It is precisely when there are opposites, when there is tension, when two voices are present at once, that psychic life becomes truly alive. A mind that is too flat, too linear, too certain of itself is sometimes not a mature mind at all, but a mind that has silenced one part of itself for too long. Harmony is not the absence of opposition. Harmony is the end of inner warfare. In a meditation session shaped by a Jungian approach, I once met a middle-aged man named Nick. He had the kind of calm presence that made others believe he was always fine. Straight shoulders, steady voice, few words, a strong sense of control. But when it was time to share, He said that what exhausted him was not work and not family, but the fact that within him there were always two people pulling in opposite directions. One part wanted to keep being the one everyone leaned on, the steady one, the one who was not allowed to fall apart. But another part was utterly worn out and only wanted to disappear for a few days, answer no one, and not have to be strong for anyone at all. What caused him the most pain was not simply the exhaustion, but the shame. That part of him that wanted to collapse felt deeply disappointing, as though merely needing rest was already a kind of failure. From Jung's perspective, Nick was not suffering because he had two opposing needs. He was suffering because he allowed only one of them to be called me, while the other was pushed into darkness as something unworthy of existing. And that is exactly how so many people quietly divide themselves. We often assume that a healthy inner life must be consistent, but absolute consistency is sometimes only a surface too narrow to contain real life. Every human being contains parts that do not fully match. There are people who long for closeness and yet need distance in order to breathe. People who want safety and yet feel themselves dying within that very safety. People who know they should let something go and yet ache because they still cannot. There is nothing abnormal in these states. They become painful only when we immediately put ourselves on trial and begin to judge. Why am I so contradictory? Why am I not more decisive? Why can I not just be one clear type of person? But the soul is not a clean profile to be presented neatly. It is a living space, and everything truly alive contains opposing forces within it. If we need an image to understand this, the human mind is perhaps like a bow. One end is what we consciously know, what we want to become, what we proudly recognize as ourselves. The other end is the opposite side, the softer, fearful, angry, tired part, or simply the part that does not fit the image we are trying to keep. It is the tension between these two ends that creates force. If the bow no longer holds tension, the arrow cannot fly. If one end is dropped, the bow becomes useless. Many people search for peace by trying to remove that inner tension. But a deeper peace is not the destruction of the tension. It is the ability to carry it without letting it tear you in half. That is why Jung did not speak of development as a journey toward light alone. He understood that a person matures when they become wide enough to contain what is opposite within them, not when the bright side defeats the dark one, not when reason defeats feeling, not when strength defeats vulnerability, but when a deeper center begins to appear within us, one that no longer panics each time contradiction is felt. When that happens, you no longer rush to fix every inner conflict. You begin to listen to it. You begin to ask, what is the part that wants to withdraw, trying to protect? What is the part that wants to keep moving, longing for? What is the exhausted part trying to say that I have refused to hear for too long? In that moment, a new kind of maturity begins. Not maturity because you have solved everything, but because you no longer see yourself as a battlefield. Much of the suffering of modern people comes from an obsession with clarity. We want to know exactly who we are, what we want, and what we need. We fear hesitation, ambiguity, the in-between spaces. But the deepest movements of the soul rarely come as neat answers. They come as two opposing forces at once. We want to stay, and we want to leave. We feel grateful, and we feel empty. We want to open our hearts, and we want to keep one door shut. If we are patient enough, we begin to see that these things are not the enemies of peace. They are signs that the soul is trying to restore balance. One part has been too large, too dominant, too loud for too long, and another part is beginning to find its voice. So harmony is not a smooth, flat, ripple-free state. It is more like a softer kind of steadiness. You still feel the opposites within you. There are still days of clarity. There are still days of fog. There are still times when you want to hold on, and times when you want only to let go. But you no longer panic when you notice this. You understand that a real human being is not a person with only one voice inside. A real human being is someone who can hear many voices within and not immediately condemn any of them. This is also the point at which we begin to understand more clearly what Jung meant by wholeness. Wholeness is not perfection. Wholeness is containment. The capacity to contain what is beautiful and what is not, what is noble and what is simply human, longing and fear, the need to be loved and the need to be left in peace. When we stop forcing ourselves to be a simple version of ourselves, something easy to explain, easy to approve of, we begin to live more truthfully. And strangely enough, the more truthful we become, the lighter we feel. Not because contradiction disappears, but because we no longer spend so much energy denying half of ourselves. So what you need to do is very simple. When you feel two directions pulling against each other inside you, do not rush to silence one of them. Sit quietly for a few minutes, name both sides as simply as you can, and let them both be present without judgment. That is all. Harmony rarely begins with a great decision. It begins the moment you stop treating one half of yourself as something that must be eliminated. Number 10. Strange coincidences and the hidden meaning within them. When the meditation ended, Nick said that on his way home, he did not feel completely lighter. Everything was still there. Work was still waiting. Responsibilities were still intact. His old habits were not about to dissolve after a single session of sitting quietly. But he said one very small thing had changed. For the first time in many years, he no longer rushed to silence the exhausted voice within himself. He no longer saw it as a weakness that had to be hidden. It simply felt like a part of him that had been silent for too long and had finally been heard. Rain began to fall as he passed an old bookstore at the corner of the street. He stepped inside only to avoid the rain for a few minutes. Nothing more. He was not thinking that he was searching for anything, and certainly not that life was about to hand him some special sign. But sometimes the moments that touch us most deeply arrive when we are completely unprepared. Standing near the window, Nick noticed a book sitting slightly out of place on the shelf, as if someone had touched it and then left it unfinished. He picked it up almost by reflex. The book was about midlife, about that stage when what once helped us stay standing is no longer enough to help us live truthfully. The moment he opened it, a small piece of paper fell out. On it was written, in someone's hand, "You do not have to remain the person who survived." Nick said that at that moment, he did not feel anything mystical. He only felt himself fall silent. Those words touched exactly something he had never put into language. For too many years of his life, he had lived as someone very good at enduring, good at holding himself together, good at not collapsing, good at being the one others leaned on. But he had never asked himself whether survival was the only way to continue living. And precisely because he had never asked, he had never realized how tired he had become from having to remain that person. This is the kind of moment Jung called synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence between what is taking place in the inner world and an outer event, even when there is no clear causal connection. He wrote very simply, "Synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see." What is striking is that Jung did not say every coincidence contains some hidden message. He only suggested that there are moments when something outside and something moving inside us suddenly touch at exactly the right time. And because of that, the event carries a spiritual weight far beyond its ordinary appearance. For someone else, it might have been only an old book and a forgotten note. But for Nick, it was like a mirror. It reflected exactly the part he had been living for years without ever seeing clearly. And perhaps that is the simplest way to understand Jungian coincidences. They do not necessarily bring a new truth. They reveal an old one, something that was already there but had sunk beneath layers of busyness, habit, and self-restraint. There are times when human beings are not lacking in answers. They are only lacking an image precise enough to show them what they are truly living. Before that moment, Nick only knew that he was tired. But tired in what way and why he was tired, and exactly which part of him was crying out, all of that remained vague. One short line, arriving at the right moment, did what months of thinking could not. It did not solve his life, but it gave him a language. And sometimes, a life begins to change from the moment a person finally has language for the deepest thing within them. Imagine meaningful coincidences as two mirrors unexpectedly catching the same beam of light. One mirror is the outer world, with its seemingly random events, meetings, objects, and accidental words. The other is the inner world, with fear, exhaustion, unanswered questions, and the quiet movements of the soul. Most of the time, those two mirrors do not face one another. But there are moments when, at exactly the right time, light touches both at once. And when that happens, we no longer feel that we are standing before something meaningless. We feel that we have just been reflected. That is why meaningful coincidences are often quiet. They do not arrive like major events. They arrive softly. A sentence overheard by chance. A person appearing at the right time. A wrong turn led us exactly where we needed to go. An old song is coming on the very day our hearts can no longer bear the silence. Outwardly, these things may be very small, but when they touch the part of us that is opening within, we know immediately that we cannot dismiss them as ordinary. This happens especially often during times of transition in life, when an old identity is cracking, but a new one has not yet taken shape. When a person no longer fully belongs to the old life, yet does not have enough courage to step completely into the new one. In such times, the soul becomes more sensitive, more tender, easier to touch. And in that state, a small coincidence may become a bridge between what we are feeling and what we are beginning to understand about ourselves. Jung saw such moments as places where unconscious material is brought closer to consciousness, not through reasoning, but through meaning directly felt. And yet the beauty of Jung's view of life lies in the fact that he does not push us into superstition. He does not tell us to see signs everywhere. At the same time, he does not stand with the cold attitude that brushes away every deep inner stirring simply because it cannot immediately be explained by logic. He stands in a very balanced place. A coincidence does not become important automatically just because it is strange. It becomes meaningful when it truly touches a movement already alive within us. In other words, the value of the moment does not lie in the outward event, but in the resonance it awakens inside. This is a very subtle point because modern people often lean toward one of two extremes. Either they too easily sanctify small coincidences and turn life into a chain of mysterious codes, or they are so afraid of their own emotional depth that they dismiss every moment that might touch them deeply, simply because it cannot be proven by reason. Both extremes rob us of an important part of the human experience. Jung does not ask for blind belief. He only invites us to look more carefully, listen more carefully, and be more honest with what is vibrating inside us. Perhaps the deepest lesson here is this: not every coincidence contains a grand meaning, but there are also moments too precisely timed to simply laugh off and walk past. Not so that we immediately turn them into destiny, only so that we may slow down and ask, why did this touch me so deeply? Sometimes the meaning is not in the event. Sometimes the meaning lies in the fact that one part of the soul was finally ready to be seen, and the outer world accidentally became its mirror. Before continuing, take a quiet moment. Breathe more slowly. Remember a time in your life when a very small coincidence left you still, not because it was strange, but because it arrived exactly when your heart needed to be touched. If you wish, share that story in the comments. Perhaps in telling it, you may realize that what once seemed so small had quietly opened within you a meaning far deeper than you ever imagined. Number 11. The voice of intuition and the inner guide. But if the outer world sometimes reflects with startling accuracy what is happening inside us, then who is it that recognizes that truth even before reason has time to understand it? Jung had a very precise line about this. Intuition does not denote something contrary to reason, but something outside of the province of reason. That sentence matters deeply because it rescues intuition from the two most common misunderstandings. One is to dismiss it as something vague, emotional, and unreliable. The other is to glorify it as a mystical voice that can never be wrong. Jung stands with neither of those extremes. He saw intuition as a distinct function of the psyche, a way the soul perceives something before consciousness has managed to arrange it into words or arguments. Jung also regarded intuition as one of the four basic functions of consciousness in his psychological system. There was once a viewer of the channel who left a very short comment, but one that stayed with me. She wrote that she had been in the same job for nearly 10 years. Everything was fine in the way people usually mean when they say something is fine. The salary was stable. The colleagues were not bad. Her family felt reassured. There was no major crisis large enough to justify leaving. But for almost 2 years, every morning when she woke up, she had the same feeling. I am living correctly, but no longer truthfully. She said it was not an intense despair, and not hatred for the work. It was only a very quiet, very persistent sense that her life was moving along a track her soul no longer wanted to follow. What was striking was that she did not trust that feeling. She tried to rename it with labels that felt easier to accept. Temporary exhaustion, the pressure of middle age, unstable moods, a lack of gratitude. She tried to rationalize everything because her reasoning mind had too many reasons to stay. But what confused her was that the feeling did not disappear. It was never loud. It was never urged. It simply returned, day after day, like an underground current. Then, one afternoon, After finishing an entirely ordinary meeting, she stayed behind alone in her office and began to cry. Not because anyone had hurt her, not because anything dramatic had happened, only because for the first time, she admitted to herself that deep inside, she had known for a very long time. This was no longer the place where her soul wanted to remain. That is the point where intuition differs from passing emotion. Emotion usually flares up in response to a situation. It comes strongly, then settles. Today you are angry. Tomorrow you may feel entirely different. Today you are sad, and a few hours later, the sadness may lift. But intuition does not move in that way. It does not have to be intense. Very often it is small, but it is steady. It returns in quiet moments. It does not withdraw simply because you try to deny it. It remains there like a gentle but constant knocking on an inner door, never forcing, only patient. Perhaps the clearest way to imagine intuition is as a compass needle set very deep in the chest. Outside, there may be strong winds, voices, pressure, expectations, fear, habit, and all the very reasonable explanations one could possibly find. All of these can make us sway, but the needle keeps slowly turning back toward its own direction. You may not like that direction. It may frighten you. It may force you to re-examine many things you have built. But if it is true intuition, it will not change simply because you want it to. It is not the loudest voice. It is the most enduring one. The trouble is that modern people so easily lose contact with that inner guide. Not because it vanishes, but because there are too many other sounds around us. The sound of comparison, the sound of expectation, the sound of everything we should do. The sound of fear, fear of being wrong, fear of losing security, fear of being judged. In a space that is so noisy, the voice of intuition almost always loses ground because it does not know how to shout. It does not argue with you. It does not try to win in the courtroom of reason. It simply continues to exist quietly and to return. Perhaps that is why many people truly hear their intuition only in very private moments, just after waking, while walking alone, while sitting by a window after an overly long day, while doing something entirely ordinary and suddenly felt my heart sink for no clear reason. Those are the moments when the noisy structure of consciousness loosens a little, and the inner guide has a chance to step closer, not to hand us truth like a doctrine, only to whisper what is out of alignment, what is true, what cannot continue forever if we still wish to live honestly. And yet real intuition must also be distinguished from fear and impulsiveness. Fear usually wants us to retreat in order to avoid immediate pain. Impulsiveness usually wants us to act quickly so we can escape present discomfort. Deep intuition is different. It is not always pleasant, but it has its own unmistakable tone. It is not frantic. It is not agitated. It does not demand that we decide in a state of panic. It simply holds one consistent direction over time. Often, it leads us toward what is harder rather than what is easier. It does not serve the ego's beautiful image of itself. It serves the truth within. That is also why listening to intuition does not mean immediately following every hunch. Jung did not encourage haste. Reason still matters. It helps us test, question, and move from feeling into a concrete form of life. But reason should be an editor, not a strangler. Intuition may give us direction. Reason helps us place our steps more firmly. When these two parts no longer fight each other, a human being can finally begin to live as a whole instead of as an endless argument within. The inner guide, then, is not a supernatural voice. It is the deepest part of yourself, where lived experience, unconscious perception, memory, symbol, and essence quietly gather into a kind of direction. It does not speak constantly. It does not speak loudly. But once it has been speaking for long enough, you begin to realize something. What confuses you is not that you have not heard it, but that you have heard it for a long time and have not yet been ready to admit it. The application of this in life is actually very simple. What you need to do is create a space quiet enough for intuition to take shape. Just a few minutes each day. No phone, no music, no forcing yourself to think until an answer appears. Simply sit with the question that has been making your heart sink and pay attention to what repeats over many days. If a feeling keeps returning, at different times, always with the same quiet but enduring direction, do not rush to act, but do not rush to dismiss it either. Write it down. Keep it near. Respect it the way we respect a guide carrying a lamp through fog. Many times, intuition does not ask you to change your entire life at once. It only asks that you be honest enough to admit that you have heard it. Number 12. The inner child and the source of creativity. And then, after listening to the deeper layers of the soul, we touch something very different within ourselves, something that does not speak through reasoning, but appears like a small light still remaining within adult life. That is the inner child. But in Jung's spirit, this child is not only a childhood memory or the vulnerable part of us. It is also the place where the soul's original innocence is kept, the ability to be astonished by the world, the ability to play with imagination, and the capacity for something new to be born from within. Many people think creativity belongs only to artists or to the unusually gifted. But Jung saw it differently. He believed creativity begins in the part that still knows how to play, still knows how to love an image, an idea, a feeling, before it has to become useful. He wrote, "The creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity. The creative mind plays with the objects it loves. What is new is not born from the part of the mind that only knows how to control and evaluate. It is born from the part still alive enough to play with what it loves. That is also why there are people who seem outwardly fine, who fulfill every responsibility well, and yet inwardly feel themselves slowly drying out. They are not exactly unhappy, only no longer luminous. Nothing within them leaps anymore from curiosity. No idea warms the heart. It is not that they have lost the capacity for creativity, but that the childlike part inside them has been silent for too long. The inner child, understood this way, is not the part that makes us immature. It is the part that keeps us from becoming stone. It keeps the soul soft, capable of feeling, capable of receiving beauty, capable of beginning again from within. A beautiful example of this can be seen in To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, the American novel told largely through the viewpoint of young Jean-Louis Scout Finch, an intelligent and unconventional child growing up in Macomb during the Great Depression. Britannica describes Scout as the central figure, an unusually intelligent little girl, and it is precisely through her child's eyes that the reader sees the hypocrisy, prejudice, and dignity of the people around her. What makes the novel so special lies not only in the social story it tells, but in Scout's way of seeing. She has not yet been numbed by adult conventions. She sees everything with sensitivity, wonder, and a directness adults tend to lose. Seen through a Jungian lens, Scout is not just a child character. She is the image of the inner child still alive in the human being, the part that can still encounter the world before it is entirely sealed off by habit, prejudice, and practicality. Precisely because she has preserved that gaze, Scout sees what the adults have stopped seeing. The adults in the town may live very correctly within their roles, their laws, their social order, but beneath that appearance of rightness lie fear, prejudice, and moral blindness. The child sees those things more clearly, not because she understands more theory, but because she has not completely lost the capacity for direct perception. That is exactly the point Jung would call the vitality of the child archetype. Small, fragile, yet carrying a kind of truth not yet hardened into numbness. What is worth noting is that creativity does not exist only in making art. Scout does not paint, does not compose in the usual sense. But her way of seeing is itself a creative act. Because at the deepest level, creativity is the capacity to look at an old world with eyes that have not died. It is the ability to let life flow back into what has become overly familiar. It is the refusal to let the soul be ruled entirely by what one should see, should think, should do. The inner child can do this. It does not tell us to reject adult responsibility. It only reminds us that if we entirely lose that childlike part, we may live correctly, but become less and less real. Perhaps that is why Jung regarded imagination and the instinct to play as something never to be underestimated. He wrote that, "The debt we owe to the play of imagination is incalculable." The line sounds simple, but it holds a very large truth. Most of what is most beautiful in human life is not born out of fear of making mistakes. It is born when someone dares to remain with an image, an idea, a hunch, a game of the soul, longer than usefulness would require. A child can sit for hours with a world of pure imagination and never feel that time is being wasted. Adults are different. Adults usually want to know immediately where it will lead, what it will produce, and whether it is worth it. And that very impatience sometimes kills the seed of creativity before it has the chance to take form. If I had to explain this through an image, I would say the inner child is like a spring of fresh water lying deep beneath the dry ground of adult life. The surface may be hard, cracked, covered in the dust of responsibility, routine, and fatigue. Looking from the outside, it is easy to believe the land has gone dry, but deep below, the spring is still there. It is not noisy, it does not advertise itself, but if one touches correctly, digs correctly, waits correctly, the water will rise again. Creativity is like that too. It is not always truly lost. Often, it is only buried beneath a life lived too long by inertia. That is why many people remember the child within them only in very special moments. When they reread a book that once made the heart glow, when they hear an old song, when they stand before a sky, a painting, a rainstorm, and suddenly feel themselves soften without knowing why. Those moments matter because they remind us that beneath the composed adult exterior, there is still a part that has not died. A part still capable of being moved without needing to justify itself. And that is the part from which something new may begin. Seen more deeply, the inner child is not only a source of creativity, but also a source of rebirth. because nothing new is ever born from the part of us that has become too sealed off. It always requires a space not fully controlled, a part still capable of wonder, a region of the soul that still believes life may yet become otherwise. Jung saw the image of the child as a symbol of what is still forming, of a future beginning to germinate in the present. That means that every time we touch the child again, we are not only touching the past, we are touching on the possibility of beginning again. Perhaps that is the deepest meaning of the inner child. It does not pull us backward into the years already gone. It keeps us from closing ourselves entirely to what may still come. It reminds us that beneath the adult shell, beneath efficiency and reason, there remains a part of us that knows how to tremble before beauty, how to grow curious before what is unknown, how to believe that life is not only for endurance, but for feeling. And perhaps that is the truest source of creativity. Not rare talent, but the ability to keep the soul alive, soft and clear enough for something new to enter. As long as that part has not gone out, the human being is not yet exhausted. There is still a place inside that can bloom, even after long years of responsibility, weariness, and silence. Number 13. Suffering as a doorway to growth. If the inner child preserves within us the capacity to bloom, then what happens when life does not come toward us in light, but on long, heavy days when everything seems made only of weariness and loss? Jung did not see suffering as a meaningless accident to be erased as quickly as possible. He saw it as a threshold. Not every threshold is gentle, and not everyone who passes through it immediately becomes wiser. But there are pains that, if we do not only resist them but dare to remain and understand them, will open a level of growth that an easy life can never touch. Jung had a very direct line. Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. That sentence touches on a difficult truth. Sometimes what exhausts us is not only real pain, but the many ways we try to avoid it, thin it out, rename it, or turn it into other spirals so that we do not have to face it directly. There is a kind of very ordinary suffering that anyone can recognize. Someone leaves a long relationship. There is no dramatic betrayal, no explosive event, only the simple truth that one day they must accept that what once felt like home is no longer home. In the first days, they do not even feel pain in any clear form. They only feel restless, tired, irritable, unable to sleep, unable to focus. They throw themselves more deeply into work, scroll their phone more, keep themselves busier. On the surface, they are trying to stabilize life. But underneath, what is really happening is that they have not allowed themselves to grieve. They have not allowed the loss to enter consciousness as what it truly is. And because of that, the pain does not disappear. It only changes clothing. It goes from sadness to numbness, from numbness to exhaustion, from exhaustion to a sense that life has become meaningless. This is exactly the point Jung touched. When a person does not go through suffering in a legitimate way, pain returns by more winding, more persistent paths. Jung did not glorify suffering. He did not romanticize wounds. He only understood that some pain is an unavoidable part of becoming human. Loss, separation, disappointment, disillusionment, the feeling that one has walked too far down the wrong road. These things are not always signs that we are doing something wrong. Sometimes, they are simply the cost of an old structure no longer being wide enough for the person now forming inside us. Real growth does not always begin in inspiration. More often it begins in rupture. An old image of the self collapses. An old belief no longer stands. A way of living that once helped us survive becomes too narrow. And in that moment, suffering appears like a very dark space between two versions of oneself. Perhaps the easiest way to imagine this is to think of a forest after fire. From the outside, fire seems to mean only destruction. Trees broken, earth blackened, air thick with the smell of ash. Yet in nature, there are seeds that open only after intense heat. In other words, what seems destructive becomes the very condition for another kind of life to begin. The human soul can be like that too. There are parts of us that will never open if life remains only smooth and easy. Not because suffering is beautiful in itself, but because it cracks the shell we have lived inside for too long. And through those cracks, a new awareness can enter. The hardest part is that when we are in pain, the first instinct is usually to escape as quickly as possible. We want meaning immediately, the lesson immediately, a way to positivize everything immediately. But Jung understood that pain hurried too quickly into a lesson has often not yet truly been lived through. There is a kind of false maturity in which people use beautiful phrases to go around their own hearts. They tell themselves to be strong, to be grateful, to remember that things will be fine, while the deepest part of them has still not been allowed to hurt honestly. That kind of maturity may look wise from the outside, but inside it is fragile. Because anything not fully suffered cannot yet be fully transformed. Suffering becomes a doorway only when we stop treating it as an intruder that must be expelled at once. This does not mean surrendering to misery. It means being brave enough to name what is happening correctly. I am losing something. I am disappointed. I am in pain because an old image of my life has just collapsed. I am sad because I have gone too far away from myself. That honesty changes the texture of pain. When a feeling is called by its true name, it has less power than pain that remains shapeless. And when pain has shape, a person can begin to carry it rather than only be dragged by it. Jung understood that consciousness often grows only after a crisis, not because a crisis is desirable, but because it forces us to encounter what we have avoided for too long. Some people only truly discover who they are after losing a job. Some only realize what matters after a separation. Some only begin to live more truthfully after recognizing they cannot continue maintaining a version of themselves that looks fine, while inwardly already depleted. In those cases, suffering is not punishment. It is the moment when illusions no longer have enough power to cover the truth. And sometimes, that is the only beginning the soul can have. But not everyone who suffers grows. Pain only opens the door. Whether one steps through is another matter. Some people suffer and then close down more tightly. Some suffer and become bitter, critical and cold toward life. Some suffer and build another shell, beautiful, intelligent, calm on the surface, but inwardly still never having lived through what happened. Growth is not measured by how much a person has endured. It is measured by what that pain has done to them. Has it widened the heart? Has it made them truer? Has it forced them to let go of roles that no longer fit? Has it brought them closer to the deeper truth of who they are? There is a truth in Jung's thought that is difficult and gentle at once. Many times what we call collapse is really only the false part losing its ability to keep standing. What breaks is not always the core self. Sometimes it is an image, a defense, an old belief, a form of control that no longer works. And because we have lived in identification with it for too long, when it cracks, we feel as though our whole self is disintegrating. But it is precisely there that a truer human being can begin. Not easily, not quickly, but truly. So when you are moving through a painful period, what matters is not forcing yourself to understand its meaning immediately. What matters more is not betraying the pain by pretending it is smaller than it really is, or turning it too soon into a polished speech. Let it be what it is. Stay with it long enough for it to speak completely, because some doors in life do not open with keys, but with the weight of pain that has been lived through honestly. And it may well be that growth is not the moment when we no longer hurt, but the moment when, even in pain, we begin to become truer to ourselves. Number 14. Returning to the self, the state of human wholeness. It is precisely here that suffering leaves not only a crack, but also opens a door leading the human being back toward the most whole part of themselves. But returning to wholeness has never been a straight journey. There are times when consciousness longs very clearly to change, to become more at peace, to live more truthfully, to step into a life more aligned with oneself. And yet, at a deeper level, the unconscious is resisting. It keeps pulling us back toward old patterns, familiar choices, and fears that once helped us survive. And so a paradox appears. We want to go on, but inwardly, some part refuses to come with us. That is why many people become more exhausted the harder they try to become themselves. They think the exhaustion comes from not having enough willpower, courage, or discipline. But in Jung's light, the problem is often deeper than that. We cannot return to the self by pulling consciousness toward the light, while abandoning the unconscious in darkness. The self is not the most beautiful version of the ego. The self is the whole human being, the place where the parts we know and the parts not yet named can finally stand together in one circle. Britannica summarizes Jung closely when it describes the self as a totality, a wholeness that includes both conscious and unconscious contents. This can be seen clearly in the story of Sal Khan, a successful figure in the field of education in America. Sal Khan is the founder and CEO of Khan Academy, the non-profit educational platform whose mission is to provide free, high-quality education for anyone, anywhere. He studied at MIT, earned an MBA at Harvard, then worked as a financial analyst before beginning to tutor his younger cousin Nadia in math from a distance. And from those tutoring sessions, Khan Academy gradually began to take shape. The popularity of the instructional videos eventually led him to leave finance and devote himself to education full-time. If seen superficially, this is only a familiar story of success, a capable person leaving a safe path to pursue what he believes in. But in Jung's spirit, the story touches something far deeper. For a long time, Sal Khan's consciousness probably functioned well within the old structure, studying well, following the right path, succeeding in finance, and doing what society considered valuable. But another part of him no longer entirely belonged to that life. Teaching family, then teaching many others, was not only a side activity, it was like a signal from a deeper layer of the self, a place where a sense of meaning had begun to outweigh the feeling of safety. And only when he dared to follow that did his outer life gradually begin to align more closely with an inner truth. Jung once wrote, "The self is not only the center, but also the whole circumference which embraces both conscious and unconscious." Perhaps that is why what exhausts a person does not lie only in inner contradiction, but in trying to live from a very small part of themselves while silently forcing the rest to remain quiet. One part of us wants to move forward, while another still clings to what is old. One part wants to open, while a deeper part still has not forgotten the feeling of insecurity. One part longs for change, while another still identifies itself through fears that have become too familiar. And in that inner mismatch, a person begins to carry a feeling that is difficult to name, as though they are living and yet not fully present with themselves. To imagine this, think of a river. Consciousness is like the surface water, where we can clearly see direction, light, and movement. But beneath it, there are deeper layers, undertows quietly pulling another way. If the surface wants to move forward while the undercurrent still drags backwards, the water begins to whirl, cloud, and lose strength. The human soul is like that as well. When consciousness longs for one direction, but the unconscious still holds on to fear, old memory, or parts not yet reconciled, we feel ourselves swimming without advancing. Returning to the self is not about forcing the surface to flow faster. It is about allowing the whole river to move in one direction at last. That is why the unconscious resists, not because it wants to destroy us, but because it refuses to be forgotten forever. Consciousness may say, "I want to love more deeply," but the unconscious remembers each wound and pulls us back. Consciousness may say, "I want to live more truthfully," but the unconscious remains loyal to the mask that once helped us be accepted. Consciousness may say, "I want to change my life," but the unconscious fears the new because the old, though cramped, is still familiar. That is why we go through such contradictory periods. The mind wants to step forward, yet the body feels heavy. The spirit delays. The emotions repeat old loops. The problem is not always a lack of will. The problem is that some part of us has not yet been brought along. Perhaps this is also the point where Jung differs profoundly from the advice that only tells people to be stronger, try harder, and overcome more quickly. He understood that the soul does not open before commands. A wounded part will not grow quiet simply because we order it to be silent. The frightened part will not disappear simply because we tell ourselves to be brave. The self is not formed through inner coercion, but through a process far gentler and far truer, when the scattered parts within us are gradually seen, acknowledged, and finally no longer forced to remain at opposite ends. Wholeness does not come when light destroys darkness. It comes when a person stops treating the different parts within as strangers. So what matters here is not trying to understand the self all at once, but learning to recognize the places in life where you are divided against yourself. When you find that you always want to move forward, but keep repeating an invisible hesitation, do not rush to blame yourself. Try sitting quietly for a few minutes before sleep, breathing more slowly, and ask softly, "What part of me has not yet been brought along?" Do not force an answer to appear immediately. Simply stay still enough to remain with the feeling. Very often, the first step toward wholeness is not the moment everything suddenly harmonizes, but the moment we stop pushing the resisting part out of ourselves. And from that very small gentleness, a person begins to return to the self, not as a distant ideal, but as an increasingly real feeling that at last they are living with the whole of who they are. Closing this journey, what seems to remain is not any single idea by itself, but a quiet realization. The human being has never been only the part that appears on the surface of life. Beneath familiar roles, daily responsibilities, repeated habits, and the endless rhythm of being carried along, there is still an inner world quietly existing. There, dreams, wounds, intuitions, fears, and unspoken longings wait patiently to be seen. Jung does not take us away from ourselves. He only helps us go into the place where we have long been living, yet have so rarely truly touched. And the deeper we go into that region, the more we understand that growing up is not about becoming harder before life, but about becoming honest enough to live closer to the whole of ourselves. Perhaps that is why real peace does not arrive when every contradiction disappears, but when we stop resisting the complexity within ourselves. We begin to feel lighter, not because life has become easier, but because we no longer have to divide ourselves into the parts that are allowed to exist and the parts that are not. We learn to look at darkness without fear, to look at suffering without immediately turning away, to look at our own vulnerability without shame. From there, another kind of stillness begins to emerge. Not dazzling, not displayed, but deep and enduring. It is the stillness of a person slowly returning, little by little, toward their own soul. If tonight's reflections have touched you, press like and subscribe to continue walking with us through quieter, deeper journeys like this one. And before you drift into sleep, hold on to one very gentle thought. You do not need to understand yourself completely in a single night in order to begin returning to yourself. As long as you are still willing to listen, still patient enough to remain with the voice within, that door remains open, very near, very deep, and always waiting for your return.